Hey guys, Luke here and welcome back to another video on the channel. Now for today's video we're going to be going over the top 5 signings I'm excited for 2018, and there's actually a lot of signings, a lot of big name, high profile signings, a lot of them who aren't going to make this list unfortunately. But yeah, I thought we'd go through a top 5. This could vary from day to day, but this is what I came up with today, so let's get into the video. Just before I get into the top 5, I need to point out that this isn't in any particular order. Now the first signing that I'm going to be talking about is one that I didn't expect to happen, and I don't think many people expected it to happen ever, and that's Cronk signing with the Sydney Roosters. Now I say didn't expect it in the sense that I don't think anybody expected Cronk to leave the Storm. We just figured he was going to end up retiring as a Storm player, a one club player, but instead he's followed his heart and he's moved to Sydney. And I actually thought he was going to just retire. Like, I know he said, I'm going to try and like play or whatever, but I thought he'd just end up not signing with anybody and taking up a media role with Fox Sports or something. But no, he signed with the Roosters, and I think it's a very, very good signing for the Roosters. The Roosters have made a fair few good signings this season. Tedesco isn't on this list, but I mean, you can add in him. Just the signings that they have made are very, very big name ones. So, and also probably very expensive ones if we're honest. But yeah, Cronk is probably arguably the best signing of the season, just in terms of like player ability wise. Like, he's far and away the best player out of all the players who've signed, in my opinion. He's done the job. He obviously just came off the back of winning a premiership with the Storm, so he went out on a high note with the Storm, which kind of leads to my whole thing, and I thought he was going to retire, go out on a high. But no, we're going to see. This is going to be the first time we're going to see how he goes outside of having Smith and Slater and Craig Bellamy. So it will be interesting to see. Maybe Cronk is going to go to the Roosters and ruin his legacy. I mean, you wouldn't think so. It's going to take something made drastic, them winning a wooden spoon or something, for him to ruin his legacy at all. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he'll go. It's always kind of been said, oh, how would Billy Slater go? How would Cameron Smith go? Like, you always had to question them. Greg Inglis was even involved in that. Obviously, he went to the Rabbitohs and he done fine for himself. But yeah, Cronk's someone who's very, very structured. He's a very structured player. So whether they'll have that structure, you'd assume if they've signed Cronk, they've got big plans for him in the sense that they're going to play to his strengths. So his strengths is definitely a very structured game plan. And I think Trevor Robertson can do that. Essentially, he's just probably a better version of Mitchell Pearce. So I would expect the Roosters to at least challenge for the title this season, especially with the signing of Tedesco as well. You add in Tedesco and Cronk, and I think you got a premiership favourite right there. Now moving on to the second player on this list, and it's actually the player that Cronk replaced, and it's Mitchell Pearce. Now obviously he signed with the Newcastle Knights. It was a big high profile signing at the time when it happened, and it was as a result of Cronk signing with the Roosters. Now I believe Pearce was told he was going to be coming off the bench, which, let's be honest, Mitchell Pearce is way too good to be coming off the bench. You say what you want, he is a rep player. Maybe he shouldn't always be a rep player, but I mean, he's played enough games for New South Wales and stuff. Like, he is better than a bench player. That's just the truth. And obviously he is, because he's went and signed with the Knights on a pretty good contract. Now when you're in the Knights situation, they were literally told they had to pretty much buy a player because they had too little of a salary cap. Like, they weren't using enough space, so they've gone ahead, they've paid Pearce the big bucks, and he's gone and signed, as well as a lot of other players at the Knights. I think when I talk about Mitchell Pearce, like being the most excited player, one of the top 5 players I'm most excited for to see in 2018, I'm more saying the Knights players. I really want to see this new Knights team. I want to see the new look Knights team, really. It's kind of got a lot of former Roosters in the side. It's got Kenny Dow now. Tautau Mboga also played at the Roosters at times. Aiden Guerra is there, and Connor Watson, which I think Connor Watson and Pearce going to reignite the halves combination. I don't think they played too often together. I think when Connor Watson played was when Mitchell Pearce was actually out with his little incident with the dog or whatever it was. So I don't think they actually got to play together too much, but I do think they would complement each other pretty well, and I do think they'll form a pretty good halves combination. And even if it isn't Connor Watson, it's going to be Brock Lamb. So I think the Knights actually have a pretty solid team. Not a lot of stars, but they've got a lot of solid players, and I think Mitchell Pearce has got to be the one that is he's got to step up for them, and he's got to take them off the bottom and take them into being a top 8 team. Whether they actually do become that top 8 team this year, I'm not sure. They have a lot of new players. Usually there seems to be one team that kind of rebuilds in the off season. It comes up with like a whole new team the next year, and they do pretty well. Maybe it's going to be the Knights this year, I don't know, but I think Pearce will go a long way into the Knights becoming a bit of a force in the coming years, and I'm excited to see what he can do at the Knights. He's a good defender, he's pretty good at attack. I think he's just a solid player, and I think a lot of teams will be lucky to have Mitchell Pearce in their side, the Knights being one of them. So yeah, I'm very excited to see Pearce in 2018. Now moving on to the third player of this list. Now this one's a little bit near and dear to my heart as a Bulldog supporter, and that's Josh Reynolds leaving to go join the West Tigers. Now this one, I'm not going to say it was expected, but you could kind of see it coming throughout the season, especially when we announced the signing of Kieran Foran. It was kind of, the writing was on the wall. Josh Reynolds was obviously going to leave. Didn't expect him to go to the Tigers necessarily. I had no idea where he would end up, but I think the Tigers actually a pretty good fit for him. They're in a rebuilding phase of their own, obviously losing Tedesco and Aaron Woods and Mitchell Moses even. So I guess he's kind of taken the spot of Mitchell Moses, and obviously Moses and Luke Brooks didn't really work together. They're maybe individually not that bad. I mean, obviously Moses is a lot better than Brooks, but I mean, they're not terrible players, but as a combination, they work terribly. Same way as at the Bulldogs, Josh Reynolds and Moses Mbye work terribly. They're two similar players. Brooks and Moses both wanted to control the game, Mbye and Reynolds didn't. So hopefully, for the Tigers' sake, you combine Reynolds and Brooks and you get a pretty good combination. You got someone who can control it and someone who can play what's in front of him and, you know, be the runner of the show. When I say runner, be the running 5'8", I should say. And even Benji Marshall was kind of similar to Reynolds, and he's a runner, even though he does try to organise as well. But Brooks, he wants to be the one who runs the show. Josh Reynolds can play what's in front of him, which I think works well for Reynolds. When he's got to do too much decision making, that's when things get a bit messy. Now, we know Reynolds is capable of being a New South Wales 5'8". Obviously hasn't really hit the heights since then. His form took a bit of a drop in form. Let's be honest. Yeah, his form took a nosedive since then. He spent a lot of time on the sideline, whether it be through suspension or injury. Still does a lot of dumb shit. Still gets sin binned a lot and throws a lot of dumb passes, and kicking game isn't very good. But he just brings that energy. He's someone you want in your side. The reason he was a big Bulldogs fan favourite, not only was he from the area, but he kind of symbolised everything that the Bulldogs were about, like the passion. He just had so much passion, so much energy. Whenever something happened, like he was always in and amongst it. So I think Tigers fans will really grow to love Josh Reynolds if they haven't already. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he goes, because I think he'll flourish under, not under Cleary necessarily, but just playing in that system with having Brooks there to control everything. I think Reynolds will do quite well. Also, he's kind of getting up there age-wise, like experience-wise, so I think he should be in his peak at the moment. Whether he is, I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see whether he can actually stay on the park. I mean, that's a big problem with him. Like I said, suspension injuries, has been getting injured quite a lot. Spent a lot of time on the shop the last few years through injury. Before it was always suspensions, tripping people and stuff, but now it's been a lot of injuries. So we'll have to wait and see whether he'll be able to stay on the park. But if he does, I'm sure he'll have a good season. At least it'll be an entertaining season. So that's why I'm excited to see Josh Reynolds in the Tigers outfit. Not necessarily because he's playing for the Tigers, because it actually kills me. I wish he was at the Bulldogs still, but hey, he's still Josh Reynolds, still one of my favourites, and I'm excited to see him play. Now, from a former Bulldog to a new Bulldog, the next player we're going to be talking about is Kieran Foran. Now, this guy on his day can be the best 5'8" in the world, who's not named Jonathan Thurston. Maybe he's the best 5'8" from New Zealand. Maybe the best 5'8" who doesn't wear a headgear. I don't know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is Kieran Foran is a bloody good player, and I think everybody knows that. But also everyone's kind of aware that he does come with a bit of baggage. Obviously, he's had some off-field problems, a lot of injuries as well. That is a big concern for a lot of people, is his hamstring at the moment. Ever since, I think it was last season at Manly, he started having hamstring issues, and it's kind of been an ongoing problem for him, and that was quite a few years ago now. So the fact that it's still hanging around probably isn't a good sign, and the fact that the Bulldogs are signing for big money and he's missed so many games as of late, also a bit of a worry, but he's a player that we've been trying to get for years and years and years, and that halfback 5'8" position has always been a bit of a problem for the Bulldogs ever since Hazel took over. Even back to our successful years, we had, you know, essentially the forwards playing it as the halves. So, you know, to actually have a proper, genuine star half, it's really, really good. I know we had Hawkinson and the man we just talked about before, Josh Reynolds, in there, but Josh Reynolds had a lot of flaws. I don't think that's any secret or anything. I just talked about it briefly before. Spent a lot of time on the sideline as well. Did a lot of dumb shit. On the field, a lot of brain snaps. Kieran Foran doesn't really have those brain snaps for the most part. He's a very, very good player. He's just a good footballer. I think you put him into like any position and he would end up being a pretty darn good player. He's got that mongrel about him. He's a good defender. He doesn't mind taking a hit, and he's exactly what you want in a halves player in that sense. Even though if it's a bit appears to be a bit of a detriment to himself with injuries, but yeah, you love to see the halves take it to the line. And he's perfectly fine with doing that, and I hope nothing changes in that department. Even though he has been getting injured lately, I'd hate to see him change his game completely. But although he was quite poor at the Warriors when they played in that, he didn't really do too much. But he wasn't the only one in that Warriors side. The Warriors just didn't do anything last year. In fact, the Warriors never do anything. But yeah, Kieran Foran, I think, is a good player. You look back to his Seagull days. The last time he played with a rookie halves was this young fella named Daly Cherry Evans, and they ended up going and winning a premiership together. So the Bulldogs probably going to pair him with a rookie halves with them by moving to fullback. Leach also re-signing. So I started getting a read on the Bulldogs. They're talking very confident, which is a good sign, I suppose. But yeah, all signs are saying that they're going to have a good season, and Kieran Foran's going to play a big part in that. Also, add in Aaron Woods, I think will have a good season as well. So yeah, I'm excited for things to come in 2018 for the Bulldogs, and in particular Kieran Foran. Now moving on to the last player of this list. Now this was a bit of a toss-up between Matt Moylan and James Maloney, and ultimately I've decided to go for James Maloney. Now, the reason I was tossing up between them two is because they kind of relate to each other. Now obviously if one move happens, the other move didn't happen either. So James Maloney has ended up at the Panthers, while Moylan has ended up at the Sharks. I'm going to be talking about mostly Maloney, but just touch on Moylan for a bit here. Obviously, he got the punt from Panthers, as did Bryce Cartwright. I think ego maybe got in the way there, and it was pretty obvious he was being shoehorned into that 5'8" role for a long time now, and it was finally happening. But I guess things didn't really work out. Coach didn't want him. They've punted him. Sharks picked him up. Sharks have got rid of Maloney. I don't think that's particularly a good move, but hey, Maloney's getting on with age a bit, and maybe they're just looking to rebuild themselves, especially with the signing of Dugan and that. So Maloney's ended up at the Panthers, which I think is a pretty good pickup for them, especially with a young halves player in Nathan Cleary as well. Now obviously Cleary is doing a fantastic job. He's doing a great job, and I'd expect him to play for New South Wales this year, to be honest. But having Maloney there to also help him out is going to be huge for him, in my opinion. It'll be interesting to see who actually does the goal kicking, Cleary or Maloney. That's something I never really thought about until right then. So they've got two class goal kickers. They just got two class halves in general. They've got an inexperienced fullback, and I think Peter Wallace is, he's decent. He's a decent hooker, but he's not that great. So there's a lot of question marks over the rest of the side, in my opinion, but at least their halves are solid as. And Maloney, wherever he goes, he brings success. There's not been a team he's been at which hasn't made a grand final. In fact, he's won a premiership at all the clubs except for the Warriors, and let's be honest, ain't nobody going to win a premiership for the Warriors, at least now anyways. Like, it was a miracle that he got them into the final himself anyway. So yeah, it was enough of a miracle that the Roosters said, hey, let's get Maloney. They signed him. They won a premiership. The Sharks signed him. They got a premiership. Will the Panthers be lucky enough to also have the same fate as those two, or will they be like the Warriors? In fact, the Panthers probably take a Warriors performance, probably take a grand final appearance. But yeah, Maloney, a solid player. Well, not solid player. He's a very, very good player. Played for Australia. He's really done it all except for an Origin Series win. But I don't know. Who knows? That could be this year. But his attack is very good. Defense is a little bit of a letdown, but they should be able to cover that, you would think. It's nothing new. Maloney's never been able to defend very well. He's a bit of a speed hump, but hey, they've gone from one speed hump in Bryce Cartwright. In fact, Bryce Cartwright didn't even lay a hand on players sometimes. No effort. Whereas at least Maloney will try and get in the way. He'll just get thrown out of the way. Also, another thing to touch on is Maloney might bring that little bit of grubbiness maybe to the side. I know with Moylan and all of them, they had that cockiness about them, where they, didn't really like the Panthers because I felt that they were super cocky, like, you know, young and brash and all that. Where that's been replaced with little Maloney, the little niggler, that's going to be pissing off teams. So I don't know, maybe that's a good thing that he's there. He can put off other teams. So I don't know. I just think overall Maloney is a good signing. And I think the Panthers will have a pretty decent season despite their team. They're a team that I'd look at and say, probably won't make the 8 or whatever. But then, like I said, the track record of James Maloney is that he'll take them to a grand final at least. So I don't know. I can't rule out the Panthers, and yeah, I'm excited to see Maloney in that Panthers outfit, or the Panthers jersey, I should say. Anyways, that was the top 5 signings I'm most excited for in 2018. Make sure you go ahead and leave a comment letting me know what were your thoughts on it and who are your top 5 players you're most excited for that have signed for new teams in 2018. I'm very interested to see what you say. I think it's going to be quite different to mine. Obviously, I think some will agree, but I think a lot of people will disagree. There's a lot of people who have missed out on, you know, your Ben Hunts and all that. So that's the beauty of it. There's so many new signings this season. It's been a lot of movement in the off season, so there's a lot of players to pick from this season. So that's a good thing. But yeah, make sure you leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's Mr. Luke of my T. Send me some Snapchat, which is on the screen right now. And also my Facebook page, you can go and give that a like. I don't really use that often, but you can go and give it a like. And yeah, that is the end of the video. Hopefully you did enjoy it, and I'll see you for my next video. Bye guys.